Hey, welcome back to another stream. It's not working. There we go. That's what you're supposed to be seeing. Look at that. So this is it, boys. This is it. And by boys, I mean, sorry to exclude any women who might be watching. I didn't mean to be gender exclusive here, but this right here is the fruit of some labor that I've been doing lately, and basically what this is it's a RGB bypass board for the Super Nintendo Mini that integrates a one of Mark's Dejitter boards into it. So it's both providing dejittered C-Sync and RGB bypass, and then S-Video is integrated in there as well. This is a prototype. There are a lot of problems with this prototype. But it's near completion. And by near completion, I mean I've identified the major problems. Now, I don't know if it works. We're going to be installing it today into a Super Nintendo Mini, and we're going to see what happens. But I've already identified some problems when assembling it that do need addressed. And we'll get there. There's actually extra components in here that I've figured out how to eliminate to make it simpler. And then another major problem is the shape and size of it. It doesn't properly fit in a Super Nintendo Mini for reasons that I will show shortly when we try to install it. We'll be able to install it, but it won't fit inside of the shell of the Super Nintendo Mini without modification to the shell, and I don't want that to be standard. The board needs some layout changes to fix that. But what we're going to do today is we're going to install this prototype and see if it works. At this point, I don't know if it is a working design. Okay, this is just a prototype. This is literally the first time I will attempt installing it. So we're going to learn, possibly, a little something today. But once it's installed, we'll be able to find out if it's working properly as intended, and if so, then this will be one of the last prototypes on the road to having a finished product. I will sell these once I do have a fully working unit. I'll be selling them on my store, and I will also, of course, be releasing the files on GitHub. I haven't started a repository for this yet, but I will start a repository, release the files on GitHub. The projects that this was made using are open source projects, so of course this is going to go to the community as well. But if you want to buy a completed one, I will eventually be offering them. But without further ado, let's go ahead and try installing it and see if it even works. So, to get started, we have a Super Nintendo Mini board here, which we're going to be installing this on. What we're going to do today is focus on the RGB portion of this board. I'm not going to wire the S-Video because that's not really the point as far as I'm concerned today. What we're focused on is wiring in the RGB. So the issue with the design as it is that because of how large this board is, it actually, when placed on the AV multi-out, it covers up one of the screw holes. So there's a standoff in the shell. There's a standoff right here, and this just covers up the entire hole. So if we're gonna be able to install this into a Super Nintendo Mini without having to remove that standoff, we're gonna have to redesign the board. It's just gonna be a layout change. All the components are gonna need to be bumped down a little bit, and actually some of the components that are gonna be able to be replaced as part of the redesign in a later revision will allow me to bump the components that are up here down, and I'll have room to do that, and then do a little bit of a cutout on the board to make room for that standoff. And that should pretty much solve it. I don't see any other immediate problems with the design. So what we definitely need to do on this one is we need to make sure to isolate this board because it has a lot of contacts for the JTAG port and then also for the oscillator, for the crystal oscillator, that need to be basically shielded, or well, it need to be protected from back here, because in a standard bypass board there's usually not much that can come into contact with anything on the actual Super Nintendo board, but in this case, yeah, the shorts, things getting where they're not supposed to is a legitimate concern. So let's go ahead and isolate this with a little electrical tape. So I'm gonna tape the board, the Super Nintendo board, Don't worry, I'm taping it. I'm gonna tape it, and I haven't changed my mind. I'm just I'm trimming the tape a little bit tighter to the shape it needs to be because I don't want it to be overly visible. Purely cosmetic. Okay, so the bottom of the Super Nintendo is taped. We're also going to tape the bottom of the bypass board. For that added layer of protection. And you may not have to actually do both. I just felt like for good measure it wouldn't hurt. I'm mainly concerned about the capacitor legs that are underneath this board on the Super Nintendo and the legs of the crystal. Okay, so from this point, the installation should be pretty straightforward compared to any other RGB bypass mod. Let's start with the AV connector. Okay. So that's all good. Now let's go ahead and remove the old crystal. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. We need to close JP3. On a future version of this, I'm going to eliminate the jumpers because that's another area that we already know. I mean, this is meant for the Super Nintendo Mini, so we already know what the jumper setting should be, so those will be eliminated. And in fact, some of the jumpers, actually, the jumpers may not be needed at all. I have to recheck what it is that we're going to be changing on it, but the jumpers actually may not be needed at all on the newest revision of it because of how we're going to be modifying the C-Sync circuit. So that may be interesting. We'll find out. Okay, so all that's ready. Let's go ahead and get some wire prepped. Okay. So in this version of the board, I've got the RGB and C-Sync lines lined up exactly where they need to be for maximum convenience when doing the install. So we're going to snip the RGB lines, and we're going to leave the C-Sync line extra a little bit longer, but not that much longer. Just a little bit longer than the RG and B lines. And then we're going to use my standard method of stripping the wires. In this case, you really don't even, I mean, the angle is so so shallow. You really don't need to strip. You could probably just cut these wires straight and not even do the angled strip that I normally do. But I did it anyway because I'm cool like that. That's why. Okay. So let's try to line this up and we'll see how much C-Sync line we need. Okay. So for C-Sync, we just need it to be a hair longer. Okay. Let's see if we can get this in there. Okay. Hey, would you look at that? That actually worked out really well. Okay. RGB and C-Sync. Really, the beauty of this mod is supposed to be, at least, the fact that you can so easily do it with so relatively few wires compared to with the two separate boards. There you go. All right. So now this side. Okay, so this is something that will need some improvement. The spacing on these wires is not really ideal for the type of ribbon that I use and recommend that others use. So we'll have to get the spacing a little bit better. But again, like I said, this is just a prototype. This is just proving the concept. Okay. So, last thing to do is to run the wire for the clock, which goes from M clock O to over here. Oh, and we need to remove C3. Forgot to do that earlier. So remove C3. Get out of there, C3. All right. Okay. Well, that's installed there. Now, that should be it. Okay, time to test. Now, keep in mind that this is not confirmed working at all, okay? So, if it doesn't work, that was a possibility, and it may need troubleshooting. I'm only doing this video because I'm really excited about this whole thing, and I really hope it works. But I am prepared for the worst. So, let's get ready, and we'll find out what we're working with here. Okay. Alright, it is working, ostensibly. Let's scrutinize the image. Is there any visual problems? It's kind of hard to say with the capture card that I use, because the capture card that I use, well, this OSSC setup is kind of shitty. Because the capture card I use only works in generic 240p line 2x mode, so I don't get a very crisp image here. I want to get this on my RGB, on my 240p optimized OSSC in the other room, but I can't capture that one, so that limits our options here. But I mean, it looks pretty good to me. It looks pretty good to me. So I guess I will. Let's try something. Let's try a different game. Let's try Star Fox 2. Okay. Yeah, looks pretty promising. I think this might have been a success. I'm pretty excited about this. So, yeah, I'm going to be working on this some more and doing a lot more testing. But I think we have a generally working product here. And I just need to revise the board a little bit to get it to fit properly. And there's a few aspects of the design that I think can be tightened up, and I'm trying to come up with an installation method to make it easy to dejitter composite video as well. That's another composite video and Luma for composite video sync cables and Luma sync cables. Specifically, the idea is with these installations, and that there's threads on the shmups forum, which is where everything involving the dejitter development is happening, is really being discussed. But there's this idea of, and it's been tested, of feeding the dejittered C-Sync into the sRGB encoder in here, which would essentially be able to dejitter everything, all the video outputs, which would allow HD retrovision component cables to work properly with the dejitter mod, which may vastly improve compatibility with TVs that have issues with 240p HD with the HD retrovision cables. So, yeah, well, this is really exciting. I'm glad that it works, and I don't see any significant visual issues. There are some people on the Shmups forum that I'm going to try to get in contact with about maybe doing some more in-depth testing. I'm kind of limited here in what I can do with the hardware I have. I have an oscilloscope, but You know, there may be more in-depth analysis testing to be done on the board to find out if there's any unknown visual issues that need to be addressed. But as it is, I think it's a success. So just be looking out for, if you want to follow the thread in Shmups, on the Shmups forum, that'd be awesome. That's where the development's going to continue. And yeah, when I have a finished product, if you want to buy it, you can go to my website. It's arthrimus.com. It's in the description. I will definitely have it posted up there as an option when I have them ready to sell. And there will be a GitHub repository with the board files in it once I have everything. You know, actually, I'm going to go ahead and post the board files now, with the disclaimer that they're not shaped correctly to fit in the Super Nintendo. But yeah, I think it's confirmed working enough that it's releasable at this point. So, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope to join me next time.